like to call this meeting to order. We have a quorum. Mr. Brooks here is going to lead us in the pledges.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Do I need to go down there? Or? Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the day that you've promised us today, for the beautiful skies. We thank you for the rain that you've given us, and help us to fill our lakes and rivers. Be with our commission today as we help to make decisions. We need to make informed, good decisions for our city, and just help us with that task. Forgive us for our sins and watch over us daily. In your Son's name, amen.
All right, first item is the consent agenda. The commission may request for a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for presentation and public comment. Otherwise, the consent agenda will be considered in one vote. The minutes from last month's meeting are part of the consent agenda. We have one change that needs to be made under call to order. Vice Chair Joe Spano called the meeting to order. Having that change incorporated.
Make a motion to accept.
Okay. We have a motion to accept. Have a second?
Second.
And a second. All right. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? None. 7-0. Regular agenda, subdivision plats. The Planning Commission has final authority for approval. Appeals may be directed to the City Council. Final plat of Bridgestone Knickerbocker Addition. Public hearing and consideration of a request for approval of a final plat of Bridgestone Knickerbocker Addition being 0.69 acres located southwest of Knickerbocker Road and Industrial Avenue.
Morning, Planning Commissioners. Jeff Fisher, Senior Planner. First case today is a final plat of the Bridgestone Knickerbocker Addition at the southwest corner of Knickerbocker Road and Industrial Avenue. It's on 0.690 acres. It's an existing tract that used to be the old Cork and Pig restaurant. New owner has bought it for future retail development, zoning CG, so the lot size and area are more than sufficient for the CG zoning. The applicant has agreed to install sidewalks along Knickerbocker Road and along Industrial Avenue, and we'll give you just a brief background of that in a minute. So this is no other issues here. The applicant isn't seeking any variances. So we're going to just quickly give a rationale for why we want sidewalks. As most of you know, there's two ways to get a sidewalk through a subdivision ordinance. One is it's a requirement, and two, it's something that we can require for public safety. So the one on Knickerbocker Road is something we believe that, or for pedestrian convenience, we believe the one on Knickerbocker Road will help. And the reason for that is starting with Schur's Landscaping, there's already a sidewalk going along here. There's just that one break. There's also a sidewalk stub on this side. So we believe continuing along Knickerbocker Road is logical and is compatible and consistent with the subdivision ordinance. The one on Industrial Avenue, there is an apartment complex behind here and some footpaths. So we believe long-term it would help at least close that gap until you reach the apartments here. If these two lots ever redevelop, they can continue it, but at least it makes the situation better, and the applicant has agreed to that. So that's basically our rationale for the two sidewalks. And that's all. Staff recommendation is to approve this final plat of the Bridgestone Knickerbocker Addition, subject to the 5 conditions of approval as outlined in your staff report. That concludes staff's presentation. If you'd like me to read those into the record, just let me know.
You have a list of them that you could pull up?
Yes, this is the summary.
That'll work.
So the Industrial Avenue, it's 36 feet, and so as a local road, you either have to pave an additional 4 feet to get to 40, or you can keep it at 36, which it is now, and add the 4-foot sidewalk. We didn't want to create an irregular jog in the road. Planning and engineering are in agreement to that, plus they'd have to tear up the curbing. This just makes more sense to have the sidewalk instead of the extra road width.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Any questions for Jeff? All right, let's open it up for public comment. If you would, state your name before you speak, please.
Morning. Bob Gage. I'm with GBT Realty. We are the developers on the project. Be more than happy to answer any questions you have regarding this request for final plat approval. Basically, we are asking for no variances. We are going to abide by all the existing ordinances and install the sidewalks as requested.
Thank you. Anyone have questions for Bob? No? Thank you, sir. All right, no more public comment. We're going to, I guess, open it up for discussion. You want to have comments or a motion?
Motion to approve is written.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented by the city staff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. 7-0. Okay, third replat in section 2, T.J.A.K. addition. Public hearing consideration of request for approval of a third replat in section 2, T.J.A.K. addition, and a variance from section 10.3A2 of the Land Development Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a minimum paving width of 36 feet with no sidewalk in lieu of the required 36 feet with a 4-foot sidewalk, or 40 feet with no sidewalk for La Cruz Street, an urban local street being 6.431 acres located northwest of La Cruz Street and Old Knickerbocker Road.
Morning, Commissioners. Hillary Bucher, Senior Planner. We're moving on to T.J.A.K. third replat in Section 2. As he mentioned, it's 6.431 acres. It's east of Old Knickerbocker Road and south of Harbor Court. So Old Knickerbocker Road is there, Harbor Court is there. The current zoning is ML and CGCH. It has a commercial future land use in SMD number 3, Harry Thomas's district, the Rio Vista neighborhood. The proposed replat is to create 2 lots out of a previously platted lot area, as well as adding in some additional survey land. So this area up here had been previously platted with T.J.A.K. This portion had been surveyed, so they're adding it all in to create 2 big lots. The purpose of this lot, track C2, is for the construction of drainage improvements for the city. The additional track is owned by Shamrock Capital Corporation. They are requesting a variance from Chapter 10.3A2 of the subdivision ordinance to allow La Cruz Street to remain 36 feet in lieu of the required 40 or 36 foot with the 4-foot sidewalk. We are recommending approval of this variance. The street currently functions. We have a recommendation by planning and by engineering services. It's a small project on La Cruz Street. It doesn't take up very much. It's mostly Old Knickerbocker Road. The existing street widths and configurations are already sufficient for the area, and this would not vary any other provisions of the ordinance. So staff is recommending approval of the replat subject to 10 conditions of approval and approval of the variance from Chapter 10.3A2 of the subdivision ordinance for La Cruz Street to remain 36 feet without a sidewalk. I'm going to go over the summary of conditions just very quickly. A tax certification, a 25-foot building line, the finalization of the right-of-way abandonment. The fire department had some questions about some turnarounds that they need to take care of or provide gates. The fire hydrant must remain open. We need to install water and sewer taps for the proposed construction. Again, request those connections, provide the street improvements or get a financial guarantee or a variance, and then illustrate some existing drainage improvements that were missed on the preliminary that was turned into the city. So does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, if you go back to the 10 conditions.
Sure.
The second set.
Yes, sir.
Item 8. it looks like there are three options. The staff is recommending that we approve the variance. Is
That's
that
correct.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyone have questions for Ms. Bucher? All right, let's open it up for public comment.
Morning, Andy Vasilio, Assistant City Engineer. We'd also like to ask for a deferral on the water and sewer taps at this point, and the primary reason is because, as Hillary said, it's for a drainage improvements. So unless we need a building permit, there's not really a reason to put water and sewer taps in there, because this is part of the Avenue P project. It's a known drainage problem that we've been having for years. We're trying to address it, so putting water and sewer taps at a location for drainage improvements doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So
Okay.
I'd be happy to answer any questions on behalf of engineering.
Anyone with questions? Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak in favor or against this case?
Hi, Mickey Favory. I'm definitely in favor of it. We've had a very long and arduous process of developing this land between us and the city, and the engineering and planning department have done a wonderful job coordinating all this, and I definitely recommend approval so we can get started on construction.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Harry Thomas. Typically, I wouldn't come up before the Planning Commission, but this is very, very important to the citizens on Avenue P because this is going to help with the drainage down there. So I encourage the commission to go ahead and approve this.
Thank you, sir. Any more public comment? All right, we're going to close public comment. Any questions or discussions among us on the board here? All right, do we have a recommendation or a motion?
I make the motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve.
Does that also
We had a
include the
condition that we
deferral?
wanted to maybe consider deferring the water and sewer taps to permitting.
Condition 6.
Do you want to leave it as it is or allow the deferral in the motion?
I make the motion to approve allowing the deferral.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to include deferring the water and sewer taps to permitting, if necessary. Let's have a vote. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? None. 7-0. All right, replat of lots 27, 28, and 29, Block 3, Poulter's Highland Acres. Public hearing and consideration of a request for approval of a replat of lots 27, 28, 29, Block 3, Poulter's Highlands Acres. A variance from Section 103A2 of the Land Development Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a minimum paving width of 36 feet with no sidewalk in lieu of the required 36 feet with a 4-foot sidewalk or 40 foot with no sidewalk for Townview Lane, an urban local street, being 6.488 acres, located southwest of Townview Lane, West Houston Hart Expressway frontage road. Ms. Bucher.
Okay, Hillary Bucher again for Poulter Highland Acres. This is a replat of 3 existing lots. It's very hard to see in this image, but there was actually lot lines running like this. So this is 6.488 acres. It's between Townview and Houston Hart. The current zoning is R&E and CGCH. The FLU is actually commercial, rural, and neighborhood. So there's 3 different future land uses. SMD number 6, Billy DeWitt in the Bluffs neighborhood. Just to give you some sort of reference as well, Arden Road is right here, and the car dealerships that are adjacent. So the proposed replat is taking the 3 platted lots and turning them into 2. The church will remain on the northern portion, and then the other lot will be vacant. The variance is from 103A2 for the subdivision ordinance to allow Townview Lane to maintain a 36-foot width with no sidewalk. It's a very rural road, so I don't foresee a lot of foot traffic on that street. Again, the street currently functions in its condition where both engineering and planning support it. Townview Lane dead ends and all the lots are replatted. The existing street widths and configurations are sufficient for the area, and this would not vary any other provisions. So staff is recommending approval of the replat, subject to 9 conditions of approval, and approval of the variance from 103A2 to allow Townview Lane to maintain a 36-foot width with no sidewalk. The summary of conditions, they need a tax certificate, they need to show some building setback lines. We need to revise the plat checklist, which is something staff can look into, extend the 8-inch PVC sewer main, or submit a financial guarantee, submit plans for the street improvements or obtain a variance, submit a drainage study, install the water and sewer lines to each lot, and contact the water services to establish a connection. Does anyone have any questions?
On that condition was submit a drainage study. When is that required to be submitted?
I believe with the plat, but we can bring up engineering services as well.
Morning.
Yes, with the drainage study, it would be with the plat.
Okay.
There are also a couple other items I'd like to bring up. First of all, based on the applicant and discussing what their use is, we'd like to also, on their behalf, request a deferral of the water and sewer taps. They're not going to need it right now, so defer that to building stage. And then also, they have that 8-inch sewer line. It goes right to near the property line. I've asked them to get a surveyor out there to confirm where the end existing sewer line is compared to the lot line. And until I hear back from them, they may not need to extend that 8-inch sewer. It may already be to their property or on their property. So that's still up in the air, but we're working with the applicant, and they're working with their surveyor to get it confirmed on our behalf.
Okay, so as it stands right now in the conditions, you're saying that they only need to extend it if it's not to their property already?
Correct.
Okay.
And it has not been determined yet. They were going to work on it pretty quickly and turn that around pretty quickly.
Okay.
So as soon as we have that information, we'll be able to make that determination.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Questions? All right. Let's open it up for public comment. If you would, please state your name.
Good morning, I'm Steve Eustace, and I represent Westside Baptist Church. And our whole purpose here is just to determine if this is a tract that we might want to sell off for the church. There is no pending use right now, but it's a possibility that the church might want to sell that lot. We do want to, I appreciate the staff's recommendation of a variance from a sidewalk or street widening. I hope you will support that. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. So there's about 3 items that say prior to plat recordation and building permit. So, but I think on the
You be more specific, please. Mr.
on the
Eustace.
drainage study.
I'm sorry?
On the drainage study.
On the drainage study.
Yeah, so number 7, but I guess unless we change anything of impervious cover by 5%, we don't do that, right, unless there's a proposed change. So just replatting the property is not going to trigger that if we don't change the impervious cover by 5%. Am I reading that?
You please state your name.
Andy Vaselio, Assistant City Engineer.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. Our interpretation, looking at the ordinances for drainage studies, is if there's not been a drainage study already completed for that property, and we look at the, what we'll call the pre-existing conditions, which is native ground, then yes, a drainage study would be required.
Platting.
For platting purposes, correct.
Okay.
So unless one has already been completed, they would be required to do a drainage study, and any on-site detention is required as part of it.
Okay.
Question. Just platting the property, how do we know how much impervious cover we're creating?
Well, for right now, they have already made some changes to that site that are different than the previous conditions. So they could look at that, and then if they have any future use, they can go ahead and project that. Or you can also use numbers based on the zoning and the projected runoff that would come from that type of zoning.
Okay.
So there are provisions in our drainage manual to handle those situations.
Thank you, Andy.
So we've already changed it. Are you talking about the church plant that's been there for many, many years? Is that? That is correct. Okay. So you're saying we do need a drainage study as part of the plating process?
Correct.
Okay.
And if I could jump in before Steve goes on with his next item, I might remind you that we have some changes proposed to that section that would allow a deferral of that drainage plan until a later phase of development. That's part of the subdivision ordinance amendments that are before you that you've tabled a couple of times. So once that moves forward, that might help in a situation like this. But currently, the ordinance absolutely requires that with no option for deferral.
So I would ask for a variance for a drainage study until any type of building and site changes are made. And also would like to ask for a deferral of water, the water and sewer taps. We have no problem, and I think we're short about 2 feet from reaching the property line with the sewer line in Arden. So we're perfectly willing to extend that a couple of feet. So.
Okay.
You're not asking for the water and sewer taps to be deferred?
I am,
Yes.
yes,
Oh, you
yes,
are?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Eustace, you're asking for a variance for a drainage and water and sewer tap study.
Just for the plat process, not for.
Want to defer it to the permitting
That's correct. That's correct, yes.
building department? Okay.
And again, under the current ordinance, you don't have the ability to defer that drainage study
Right.
to a later phase. That is a requirement of the ordinance that is not subject to a deferral at this time.
Okay.
And so just a point of clarification then, Andy. So you're saying we can't really ask for a variance on the drainage study? Okay. So the comment in there about changing by 5%, saying that it's already been changed by 5%?
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
I think we're good. Anyone have questions for Mr. Eustace? Thank you, sir. Do we have any more public comment? Okay, we're going to close public comment. Let's have a discussion among us, or a motion. John, I'd appreciate some help with the drainage study and what you guys have proposed in the text amendment changes to the ordinance.
Basically, it's a 1 or 2 lines added to the ordinance that would authorize the city engineer to defer the drainage study from the platting stage until some future building occurs on the property.
Okay.
But
And that's
again,
for any development?
Yes. I mean, again, as it's worded currently, it would be subject to the discretion of the city engineer. But yes, it would give him that authority to recommend that. It would ultimately be up to you all to decide based on that recommendation. But again, that currently the ordinance says a drainage plan shall be conducted. It makes no mention of any deferral or waiver of that.
Okay.
But
And
we
are you saying that we have the authority to grant a variance on when that study would be required to be submitted or not?
I think we would have to look and see if a variance would be allowable. However, in order to approve a variance, they would have had to have requested that at the application stage. So the first answer is I'm not sure if a variance is even allowable. We would have to look into that.
They've
But-
made the request in this meeting though, right?
No, there's actually a variance application process as part of the plat application that actually has, they have to include that on the application, and there's actually a separate fee for a variance request. So they would actually have to go back and reapply and come back at your next meeting if that were the case.
John, as a commission, we can make that motion, I believe.
you probably have the authority for the variance, but you don't have any information about the current impact. So you'd be granting a variance to what you don't know what the consequences are or what normally it would be to rely on the city engineer office, which they feel that it shouldn't be a variance, but you have the final authority.
So in order for us to grant the variance, you're telling us that we have to defer this case and allow them to submit a request for a variance in order to move forward? Or can we grant the variance now?
As a motion.
Grant the variance now, knowing that there are some runoff issues or some drainage issues
Yes, sir.
that you have no evidence about, but the city engineering office is saying that they need a study.
Okay.
Right, and the variance would be, I mean, as Mr. Eustace said, it would be done at a later date. So it's not that we're not saying they don't have to have it, we're just doing a variance for the study currently.
If that's what you say the variance.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
You should state what will trigger the requirement for the study.
Okay.
Okay. So any permitted work, any work on the site that required a building permit, would that be an adequate trigger?
Or would it be site plan?
I think a site plan.
Site plan?
Because if you say any work that requires a permit, if they replace a window, for example, or something like that, that would trigger it, and I'm not sure that's your intent.
Okay.
Any building permit work that would trigger a site plan.
Okay. Yes, sir, Andy.
Assistant City Engineer. On this site, they may not need a building permit for what I understand they're planning on doing, number one. And then number two, the site's mostly developed other than maybe a small portion of it. So from engineering's perspective, some of that drainage will go into TxDOT right away as well. Our recommendation would to not defer it, to go ahead and have them do the drainage study at this point, because the site's mostly developed and because, again, what they're planning on doing may not require a building permit, meaning that drainage study may not be coming at any time in the future. So that's the perspective.
The city never required a drainage study until recently for that site, though, correct?
Correct.
So they complied with all of the ordinances and requirements when they built their improvements on that land.
Yeah, I'm not sure when this was platted originally, but if it was platted before 2010, that's when our current ordinance is, and that's when our drainage manual became effective. So,
Okay.
as far as I know, and I haven't looked into it, I do not think they've done a drainage study to date.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eustace, you have a comment?
Speaking in support of deferring a drainage study till some permitting process, I mean, I don't think anybody could do anything on that site without some sort of permitting or site plan. Even if they just paved it, that requires a permit.
Right.
And if they don't change the impervious cover, we're where we've been for 30 years.
Okay.
Having heard that, I think I would amend what I suggested, that your motion be not only would it be triggered by a site plan, but any impervious cover increase of 5% or more as per current ordinances. As for example, we don't currently require a permit for a parking lot. And so that would not trigger it, but that's something we think should trigger a drainage study.
Thank you. Yeah, we agree with the 5% change. Okay. Everyone understand what we're doing, where we're headed?
Yes, sir.
So you would have any more questions? Okay. Discussion or a motion among us?
I would like to make a motion. I don't know how to say it exactly, but I would like to approve as presented with the exception of the deference on the water and sewer taps and also a variance on the drainage study up to the 5%. Does that make sense?
So if they make any changes beyond this point, more than 5% of the impervious cover, that would kick in a drainage study.
Correct.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Repeating your motion?
Okay. My motion was as presented with the exceptions of the water and sewer taps to be deferred.
Okay, are you accepting that they be deferred, or
Yes.
you're
I am
okay
saying-
with them being
proposing that we
deferred?
I'm
defer them.
proposing we defer them.
Okay.
And then that we also have a variance for drainage study.
If they change the impervious cover more than 5%
5%.
from this point.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. 7-0. Okay, related comprehensive plan amendments and rezoning. City Council has final authority for approval of comprehensive plan amendments and rezoning. CP 18-07, Galvan. Public hearing and consideration for approval of an amendment to the City of San Angelo Comprehensive Plan, changing the neighborhood future land use to the neighborhood center future land use, being 0.22 acres located at 1520 Bryan Street. Ms. Bucher.
If you can go ahead and read the zone change caption as well. I will be presenting both cases at one time.
Z 18-16, Galvan. Public hearing and consideration of a request for approval of rezoning from the single-family RS1 zoning district to the neighborhood commercial CN zoning district, being .22 acres located at 1520 Bryan Street.
Thank you, Commission. Again, Hillary Bucher, Senior Planner. We're going to move on to Z 1816 and CP 1807, Galvan. We're looking at .21 acres, 0.218 acres at 1520 Bryan Street. It's on the northwest corner of Bryan and South Bell, and it's in SMD number 3, Harry Thomas's district, Fort Concho East neighborhood. So the future land use of this property is neighborhood, and the current zoning is single-family residential. I would like to point out on the zoning map, though, directly across is heavy commercial, and kind of catty corner is CGCH. So it's surrounded by a lot of commercial on South Bell Street. So this is the existing building that's located there. It's a CMU block building. Seems to be at some point some sort of garage. They also have a garage bay here. So it has frontage along Bell Street. And then again, Bell Street here. The self-storage is directly to the east. So pretty heavier commercial uses. Talca, Texas is kind of southeast of that. And then there's residential to the south and to the west. So we believe that this will serve as a great transition piece in the middle of these heavier zonings to the residential. So the future land use of neighborhood center is lower intensity than the commercial that's adjacent. They're not sure exactly what they want to do with it, some sort of retail establishment. They have a couple of different ideas, and the applicant is here as well. The proposed development is consistent with the neighborhood commercial. The area has a lot of mixed uses along Bell Street to the west is residential, but the east side is mostly commercial. The area has not been developed in a residential capacity at this point, and it's very compatible with the surrounding commercial uses. So 15 notices were mailed out. At this point, I've received 0 in favor and 0 in opposition. So staff is recommending approval of the comprehensive plan amendment to change the future land use designation from neighborhood to neighborhood center, and approval of the rezoning from single-family residential to neighborhood commercial zoning. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Bucher? All right. Let's open it up for public comment. Anyone speaking in favor or opposition of this case, please come forward. State your name before you speak, please.
Together. This has been a goal of ours to open up our own business. Not only are we trying to instill in our children that they can be entrepreneurs in their generation, we believe that it'll benefit us and our family, but we also believe that it'll be beneficial to the city of San Angelo as well by opening up new businesses on Bell Street.
Okay.
Good morning. I'm Mr. Galvan. I would like to say that when I first seen the place in 2016, I seen potential in it. And now that, I've got great support behind me, I've come a long way. I want to do this not just for myself, but for my kids. I want to be able to make something that like if I was to not be here tomorrow, or something that they could look forward to in the future. Like Hillary said, we really don't know what we want to do right now at the moment, but we do want to rezone it, and just by rezoning it would help us a lot, make the property value go up. If we wanted to rent it out, we could rent it out. And we do got family who own businesses around San Angelo already. If y'all, I don't know if y'all familiar with Mendez Cafe. You know, that's my uncle. You know, I grew up in restaurant environment. You know, I've been a dishwasher, I've been a waiter, know how to cook. The mother of my child cooks excellent too. So, you know, we have a lot of ideas and we want to do the right thing. But it's, like I said, I just don't want to do it for myself. I want to do it for my kids. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Becky DeMarinis, and we live the next street over on Roosevelt, and it's the same block. We didn't receive a letter. Were we supposed to receive a letter?
Yes, they were mailed in the mail if you were within that radius.
Didn't get one.
Okay, well, we have to put them in the postage.
But, well, I have a question about the potential business that would be there. Would there be, what would your operating hours be, or? Because we live on Roosevelt, and it's already a really busy street, and it's going to get even busier when they start working on Bell Street. And if it's going to be like a 24-hour deal or something that goes real late at night, or if it's going to be loud, you know, it's going to be really impact us.
We, like I said, we've come up with a lot of ideas, and if, for instance, we did do food, we did have intentions of doing something like being different from other places as far as selling. We want to do tacos al pastor. I don't know if y'all familiar with those.
Oh, yeah.
But we don't want to attract negative attention. We're not gonna have music blasting and all that. We don't want that to happen. But we do want to be able to be different from all the taco spots. We want to be able to attract people. You know, even if it we have to stay up late or anything, but we don't want to cause no, we want to be able, I know there's a lot of cops that go down on Bell Street anyways, and sometimes they park right across the street from the lot. Like, they set up speed traps there, like, all the time, so. But our intentions are not to create a negative environment, ma'am. You know, that's what you're asking.
Okay.
Thank you. What's the current zoning on this lot?
Currently, it is single-family residential.
Okay. Okay. Is there any more public comment? All right, I'm going to close public comment. Open it up for discussion amongst us. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or a motion?
Great idea.
Make a motion to approve.
Do we need two motions?
You can make separate motions for the
Motion
comprehensive plan amendment and the rezoning.
On both, to approve both.
I second both.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve both, as presented by the city staff.
Can we do two votes for each one? One for the comprehensive plan and one for the rezoning?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve one.
Comprehensive plan and the rezoning.
We have a motion and a second to approve the comprehensive plan as proposed by the city staff.
It's from neighborhood to neighborhood center.
Okay? So we're going to vote on the comprehensive plan change. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, 7-0.
And I make a motion for the rezoning from single-family residential to neighborhood commercial.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the rezone as presented by the city staff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None, 7-0.
Thank you, commissioners.
Additional uses. The Planning Commission has final authority for approval. Appeals may be directed to City Council. CU 18-12, M. Favre. Public hearing and consideration of a request for approval of a conditional use to allow household living in a general commercial, heavy commercial zoning district being .56 acres located at 4122 Forest Trail.
Good morning,
Heredia.
Commissioners. Christina Heredia with the City for the Record. I'm presenting CU 1812 Favory. It is a current existing apartment complex located on Forest Trail. The loop is just down here, and then actually right here is some new development where they're building like an eye center, doctor's office. It is, the property is .56 acres, single-member district number 6 in the Sunset neighborhood. The future land use is neighborhood, and the zoning right now is general commercial, heavy commercial. This is a site plan of the way the property currently is. So the north is going this way, so this would be Forest Trail right here. The applicant has proposed to put 2 new buildings in right there. Currently, the apartment building is what's called legal nonconforming. It was built in the 70s. At that time, we had comprehensive zoning where apartments were allowed in commercial zoning districts. Today, they are not, so anytime the applicant wants to do improvements, he needs to get a conditional use for that, and that's what we're here for today. So this is the front of the property. This is that Forest Trail. There is an alley right here, and that's what this view is right there. This is on Forest Trail. If you're looking to both the south and the north of it, you can see that there is an apartment complex adjacent to it, and then there's residential homes across the street. We are recommending approval based on that impacts are minimized. Number one, like I said earlier, it was built in the late 70s when apartment uses were allowed in a commercial zoning district. We think it's consistent with the zoning ordinance because they are allowed to exist with a conditional use. It's compatible with surrounding area because there is a lot of residential, both single family and multifamily in the area. Because the property is mostly built out, we don't think that there will be any additional effects on the natural environment. Any that are would be minimal in nature. We think that there's a community need based on the established buildings and that it follows the development patterns because there is already additional single family and multifamily in the area. I sent out 11 notices. I did receive 2 in favor and 0 in opposition. We are recommending approval of a conditional use to allow household living in the general commercial, heavy commercial zoning district, subject to 1 condition of approval, and that is that the applicant shall obtain a building permit as needed. That is my presentation. Do you have any questions for me?
Anyone have questions for Ms. Heredia? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to open it up for public comment. Anyone wish to speak in favor or opposition of this case, please come forward and state your name.
Mickey Favory, and I'm definitely in favor of it. Nothing is going to change as far as what's existing there right now. It's just an extension of another building along the same lines or the same occupancy type. That's all.
Okay.
So, Mickey,
Yes, ma'am.
the building's going to remain there, and then you're going to add more like apartments like you did on Avenue L, or what are you thinking?
No, I'm just going to add 2 bedrooms in my backyard.
Okay.
That's all it's going to, I'm going to cover up the pool and add 2 bedrooms back there.
Okay. I didn't understand what was
Proposed.
Oh, what I was going to build?
proposed, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
or how this, since it already allows for the hotel or the apartment living,
Right,
why we needed to change it. Okay.
right.
Thank you.
No, I don't want to change it. I want it to continue how it is.
Okay. But you just need to do that to do the addition to what you have. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment? All right, we're going to close public comment. Anyone have any comments or questions? Do we have a motion?
I make the motion to approve as proposed.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as proposed by the city staff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. 7-0. CU 18-15 Carter, public hearing and consideration of a request for approval of conditional use to allow household living, single-family dwelling with accessory uses in the general commercial, heavy commercial CGCH zoning district and general commercial zoning district being .277 acres located at 4007 North Chadbourne Street. Mr. Fisher.
Morning again, Planning Commissioners. Jeff Fisher, Senior Planner. This is a conditional use, CU 1815 Carter. The existing zoning on this property is CGCH, and there's an existing home on the property that's been there since about 1950. The owner purchased it, I guess, within the last 10 years, wants to build an attached garage to the south end of the home, maintain the 5-foot setback here. Similar to the previous case, expansion of a residential use in a commercial district requires a conditional use to do that, so that's what the applicant is doing. It's in SMD number 2, Tom Thompson's district in the Riverside neighborhood on 0.277 acres. The current future land use is neighborhood center, and as mentioned, the current zoning is CG and a CGCH. There's a little sliver here that's CG, but either way, the conditional use will allow the residents to expand, which isn't allowed in either of those zoning districts. Since the notifications were sent out, we were going to impose a condition that they merge the two pieces together. There's a small tract here in the back. They've now done that already with the appraisal district, so this rectangle is now one property, so that's been taken care of. These are the photos of the area. Looking north, you have the Cowboy Church. South is an existing single-family dwelling. There's a proposed short-term rental. My colleague will go over with you in a few minutes. That's the other case today. So could be next to a short-term rental, a Cowboy Church. So it's a mix of commercial and some residential uses already there. This is looking at the home. The existing home's already built, like I say. The garage will be built over this area here where they have their RV. They will not have to make any improvements on the paving because the the garage doesn't need a change of occupancy at this point. So down the road, when we look at our parking ordinance, we may fix that. But as of right now, they're in compliance. They meet all the setbacks. The new garage will maintain a 5-foot side yard setback. We'll just quickly, there's the site plan there. We'll quickly go over staff's rationale for approval. As I mentioned, there's a residential use already to the south that could be a short-term rental. It's consistent with the zoning ordinance, meets all the setbacks, floor area ratio, et cetera, coverage. They're not expanding by more than 50%, so they don't need a subdivision plat. This was on surveyed land, but it does meet the current ordinance exemption for that. The proposed use is low intensity, surrounding the commercial uses to the east and north. No effects on the natural environment. No further paving is required. As I mentioned, it's been a home since the 1950s, so the garage will just cover that gentleman's RV. And the development patterns, there's a large driveway to turn around, so the cars shouldn't have to directly back out onto the street, as well as Chadbourne is a minor arterial road, and so can easily accommodate any traffic given this is a residential use. 4 notices were mailed out. We have not received any responses. This concludes staff's presentation. Just quickly, the recommendation to approve a conditional use to allow for household living, a single-family dwelling with accessory uses in the CG and CGCH zoning districts on the subject property, subject to the 2 conditions of approval in your staff report. Any questions or comments?
Questions for Mr. Fisher? No? Let's open it up for public comment. Anyone wish to speak in favor or opposition of this case? Please state your name.
Chris Forbes. I'm the operator of the property. My dad is the owner of the property, so he's not here today. But I'm in favor of the garage being built, and then I can talk more about the short-term rental when that comes up.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this case? We're going to close public comment. Discussion among us or a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve as presented by the city staff. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. 7-0. CU 1816 Carter, public hearing and consideration of a request for approval of a conditional use to allow a short-term rental, the general commercial zoning district being 3.08 acres located at 4003 North Chadbourne Street. Ms. Heredia.
Good morning, Christina Heredia for the record. As you just heard, you approved a residence right there. We are looking directly to the south. There is a single-family home right here, and there is an office building right here. It is one lot that is zoned 3.08 acres. I'm sorry, it's zoned general commercial. The single-member district number 2 in the Riverside neighborhood. So the future land use is neighborhood center. General commercial is the zoning district. This is the front of the property right here, looking from 2 angles. So there, here is the short-term rental. There is one long driveway that goes up from Chadbourne like this, and then it swings around kind of like that. Here is that office building that I showed you earlier. We have adjacent residential, and that's that house you just approved right now for a conditional use. And then directly to the north is the Cowboy Church. We are recommending approval of the short-term rental. Number 1, impacts minimized. The only residential within it, any distance is the one directly to the north, which is owned by the same property owner. The short-term rental is consistent with the zoning ordinance. It meets all the requirements that both that there's no STR within 500 feet and that the minimum paving width of the street is over 30 feet and North Chadbourne has over 55. We also think it's compatible with surrounding area. It's a low-density area, and with the Coliseum nearby, we think a short-term rental would be a suitable use in that area. Because it's already paved and the applicant has put in the required parking, we don't anticipate any detrimental effect to the natural environment. We do think there is a community need because there are currently no approved short-term rentals in that area. And as North Chadbourne continues to grow, we think that a short-term rental would be compatible with the neighborhood center designation. I mailed out 13 notices. I did receive 2 in favor. I received 1 in opposition. However, we think that that property owner was confused about what a short-term rental is, and they were opposed to storage units. So we are recommending approval of an STR in the general commercial zoning district, subject to 6 conditions of approval. Those are a summary that they get a change of occupancy, they must maintain their parking, they must maintain operations under section 406, they cannot have outside storage. The house currently has 3 bedrooms, so we're requesting that they maintain that number of 3 bedrooms and that the conditional use is non-transferable. This is my presentation. Do you have any questions? Or I have the full conditions if you need them read.
I think that's
Question
okay.
for you. On the STRs, is it not, when it is, a home is designated as a short-term rental, does that not pass to the next owner usually?
No, not under STRs. They have to be, this one will have to be renewed after 1 year,
Okay.
and then every 2 years thereafter.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have questions for Ms. Heredia? All right, thank you. I'd like to open this up for public comment. If anyone speaking in favor or opposition would please come forward and state your name.
Chris Forbes again. This little house was like built in the 50s, and we've really fixed it up. It's so cute. It's going to be a perfect little spot for the rodeo. I've talked to Mr. Thompson. He's really excited and looking forward to renting it during the rodeo, so we're excited to help on that end of things. Love to invite y'all to rent it as well if you need to, so thanks.
Anyone else? We close public comment. Discussion among us or a motion, please.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented by the city staff. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? None, 7-0. Text amendment. City Council has final authority for approval of text amendments. Public hearing and consideration. The text amendment to Chapter 12, Exhibit A, Zoning Ordinance, Article 3, Section 315.H.4.D, to remove the last reference to the use category of game hall from zoning ordinance. Ms. Ms. Heredia.
Good morning, Christina Heredia for the record. So last spring, we brought a text amendment to you to remove the use of game hall from the zoning ordinance. It was brought about because the mall had concerns of certain uses being allowed in their area and that they would be reclassified under game hall. So we looked at it, we reviewed it, and realized that it was kind of an archaic reference. So in April 17th, City Council did agree to remove that use category from the zoning ordinance. However, we discovered that there was a reference to game hall under the exceptions list of retail sales and services, and so we are here today to remove that. So this is what section 315H4D looks like. In your staff report, I had all the exceptions listed. We're only removing 4D, which says game arcades, billiards, and pool halls are not classified as retail sales and services. Game halls are classified as a separate use category. We want that removed because we no longer have a use category for game hall. So we are recommending approval of a text amendment to Chapter 12, Exhibit A zoning ordinance, Article 3, use regulations, Section 315.H.4.D, which is the retail sales and services exceptions. And that is my presentation.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Heredia? Let's open it up for public comment. Anyone wish to speak in favor or opposed to this case? All right, we're going to close public comment.
Make a motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented by the city staff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 7-0. Okay, B, public hearing and consideration of a text amendment to Chapter 12, Exhibit A zoning ordinance, Article 2, amending Section 208.G.1 for conditional uses and Section 209.I.1 for special uses to only apply the 12-month expiry period when a permit from the city is required. Ms. Heredia.
Okay, good morning, Christina Heredia for the record. Frequently when we have conditional uses, they are to allow a use that isn't normally allowed. Same thing with a special use. After that special use or conditional use is approved, the applicant then goes and typically gets a building permit, builds their use, and all is fine. In the zoning ordinance, there's a requirement that if they do not receive that building permit within 12 months, then the conditional use is automatically revoked. There is an exception to allow a 12-month extension based at the discretion of the planning director. There are many instances, we just saw 2 today, where the conditional use is to allow a use that is pre-existing, that used to be allowed that no longer is, such as household living in a commercial zoning district. Typically in those areas, there may not be a reason to get a building permit. They're just bringing themselves into compliance. And so under our current zoning ordinance, if they don't get a building permit, that conditional use is actually no longer valid. And we don't think that is it's what the spirit of the zoning ordinance intended. So we are asking that there be an exception built in to that to allow those applicants who don't actually need a building permit to continue with their conditional use. So this is what it currently says. All conditional use approvals shall be subject to the requirements within 12 months. We are changing that to say all conditional use approvals that require a permit from the division must acquire the permit within 12 months. And we are doing the exact same thing for the special use. So right now it says all of them, and we are changing it to say basically that require. So that is what we are here today, is to recommend approval of a text amendment from Chapter 12, Exhibit A zoning ordinance, Article 2 development review. The first is Section 208.G.1, which is the conditional use, and Section 209.I.1, which is for special use. That is my presentation. Do you have any questions?
No questions. Okay, we're going to open it up for public comment.
This is what we're proposing.
Conditional use, if you don't get a permit, goes away?
Currently, yes, that is the case. Within 12 months or a 12-month additional extension, they go away. So we are here to remedy that so that situations such as yours no longer have an invalid or revoked conditional use. So this will actually
I was thinking.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of this.
All right. Do we have any more public comment? All right. We're going to close public comment. Any questions or a motion?
Is it one motion or two, since it's two different?
We need to.
I wrote it as one motion.
One motion, okay. I'll second
Two
then.
different amendments, but I think it can be one motion. It's changing both sections.
Okay, I second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the changes in both areas as presented by the city staff. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? None. 7-0.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Director's report.
I just had a couple of things. First of all, Planning Manager Rebecca Guerra has submitted her resignation, and so we will be losing her. And also, Christina Heredia has also given her notice to move on to another opportunity. So we will miss them, but wish them both well in the future.
Yes. Hate to lose you guys.
That's all I had.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. All right. What else we got? I think we're done. Future meeting agenda and announcements. The next regular meeting of the Planning Commission is tentatively scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. Monday, September 17th, 2018 in council chambers of McNeese Convention Center at 501 Rio Concho Drive. Adjournment. We have a motion. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, none.